nor does he have any plans of getting one. At least not that they've tried to like look at. I don't even believe he has his permit yet. So if you are worried about driving, you're not alone. If you're excited about driving, I know you're not alone. Okay. Heck, 3/4 of you raise your hand once you realize what my question was. Okay. Now, looking at the background of this, although driver's license are required by some states by the early 1900s, age restrictions on drivers did not begin until later. These restrictions were motivated by the need to protect the public from young drivers who were increasingly viewed as a problem on the highways. Some states selected 16 as the age at which people could drive, while others chose 18. Eventually, 16 became the recommended legal age for drivers. Although there are a few exceptions today, most states now allow teenagers to get a driver's license at the age of 16. Okay. And Missouri has changed that since I was a kid, because the day you turned 16, you could have just walked in and got your license if you could pass the driving test. I didn't have to ever have a permit. I didn't have to log so many hours. I didn't have to prove that I had ever driven a car before. Now, I had a farmer's permit. If any of you have ever heard of a farmer's permit, I was able to drive at the age of 14 on the farms that I worked at. Like, I drove huge trucks, utility trucks, 24-foot trucks. Like, I worked on a dairy farm, actually in Old Antonio, and drove since I was 14 years old. Now, that's even harder to get a farmer's permit now, unless you are family to the farmer and live on said farm and you are used as an employee. Okay, because it's even hard to get a worker's permit at the age of 14. But it used to be possible in Missouri to start driving at the age of 14. Now, I cannot drive on a highway, and I can only travel a certain amount of ways away from the farm. I think it's like 5 miles. I think I could drive to a gas station close to the farm. That was about it. So, looking at setting a purpose for this, because I know many of you are excited about driving, as you read, think about the points each writer makes regarding the age requirements for drivers. Look for evidence that supports each point. Now, if we're looking at this, is it important to look at driving as an independent thing, or are we looking at driving as technology? Technology. Technology, technology, technology. That's what cars are. That's what being able to do new things are. Okay. All right. Raise the driving age. The radical idea is gaining momentum in the fight to save the lives of teenage. Hopefully you're following along with me so I don't have to stop every sentence and a half like I'm doing now. The fight to save the lives of teenage drivers, the most dangerous on the USA roads, and their passengers. Brain and auto safety experts fear that 16-year-olds, the youngest driver's license in most states, are too immature to handle today's cars and roadway risks. New findings from brain researchers at the National Institute of Health explain for the first time why efforts to protect the youngest drivers usually fail. The weak link, what's called the executive branch of the teen brain, the part that weighs risks, makes judgments, and controls impulsive behavior. Pause right there. How many of you say that some of your behavior might be impulsive? Impulsive means you do things at random and you don't even know why you did them. You just did them because, hey, my brain said to do them.
Yeah, that's me too.
Caleb, you just got in a pushing match with Zach the other day. You're grinning the whole time when I said impulsive. You went, oh, dang it. This article's talking about me. It's normal teenagers. It's normal teenage behavior. Do some of you have issues with making judgments and doing the right thing because it's just the right thing?
I'm so lost.
Alex, I agree. I think you are the type of person, because my son's kind of the same way. He's just geared that it's easy to do the right thing, so just do the right thing. Not every teenager is like that, are they, Bruce? Not every teenager will just do the right thing, right? Will you sometimes misbehave just because, why not? Okay. Bruce, I only pick on you because, well, I pick on you. But you also will be honest with me. A lot of times it only takes this for boys to decide to do something that might be dumb. Hey, you want, okay. And then you do something stupid. Right? It might take a little bit more for the female gender, but I know from a boy's perspective that It takes a giggle or a nod from your friend, and all of a sudden you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Okay? No. Hey, think through what you're saying and understand if it's appropriate or not, right? And if that's the case, then maybe I need to have you talk to Mrs. Cicero. Hopefully it's not. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Scientists at the NIH campus in Bethesda, Maryland, have found that this vital area develops through the teenage years and isn't fully mature until age 25. One 16-year-old brain might be more developed than another 18-year-old, just as a younger teen might be taller than an older one. But evidence is mounting that a 16-year-old brain is generally far less developed than those of teens just a little older. The research seems to help explain why 16-year-old drivers crash at far higher rates than older teens. The studies have convinced a growing number of safety experts that 16-year-olds are too young to drive safely without supervision. Privately, a lot of people in safety think it's a good idea to raise the driving age, says Barbara Harsha, executive director of the Governor's Highway Safety Association. Sounds like a blast to work there. It's a topic that is emerging. Americans increasingly favor raising the driving age. A USA Today CNN Gallup poll has found nearly two-thirds, 61%, say they think a 16-year-old is too young to have a driver's license. Only 37% of those polled thought it was okay to license 16-year-olds, compared with 50% who thought so in 1995. So the number of people that think 16-year-olds should drive is dropping. A slight majority, 53%, think teens should be at least 18 to get a license. The poll of 1,002 adults conducted December 17th through the 19th, 2004, has an error margin of plus to minus percentage points, 3% percentage points. So that means they could be off depending on how people wanted to answer by 3% one way or the other. Okay. So over 50% think it's a bad idea that 16-year-olds drive. Many states have begun to raise the age by imposing restrictions on 16-year-old drivers. Examples: limiting the number of passengers they can carry or barring late night driving. But the idea of flatly forbidding 16-year-olds to drive without parental supervision, as New Jersey does, has run into resistance from many lawmakers and parents around the country. Irving Schlossberg, a Florida state representative who lost his 14-year-old daughter in a 1995 crash, says that when he proposed a law to raise the driving age, other lawmakers laughed at me. Now, his 14-year-old probably wasn't driving, but she was probably hurt or killed in a driving accident with a 16-year-old. Bill Van Tassel, AAA's National Manager of Driving Training Programs, here's both sides of the argument. We have parents who are pretty much tired of chauffeuring their kids around, and they want their children to be able to drive, he says. Driving is a very emotional issue. Why would it be an emotional issue? What do you think, Alex? Okay. So it would be a useful thing for the parents, right? Tyler? Okay, so on the other side, they don't want, it is worth the risk to them, but they don't want their kids being hurt either, right? That's the trade-off. It's useful. Kids need to learn how to drive, but I don't want them hurt because it's very easy to get hurt in a car accident, correct? It's a big vehicle, all right? But safety experts fear interaction could lead to more young lives lost. Some sound a note of urgency about changing course. The reason: a record number of American teenagers will soon be behind the wheel as the peak of the baby boomlet hits driving age. By the way, that would be your older siblings with the baby boomlet. Already an average 2 people die every day across the USA in vehicles driven by 16-year-old drivers. 2 a day die in vehicle accidents caused by 16-year-old drivers. 1 in 5 16-year-olds will have a reportable car crash within the first year. In 2003, there were 937 drivers age 16 who were involved in fatal crashes. In those wrecks, 411 of the 16-year-old drivers died and 352 of their passengers were killed. 16-year-old drivers are involved in fatal crashes at a rate nearly 5 times the rate of drivers 20 or older. Gail Bell, whose 16-year-old daughter, Jessie, rolled her small car into a Missouri ditch and died in July 2003, says she used to happily be Jessie's ride. She would give anything for the chance to drive Jessie again. We were always together, but not as much after she got her license, Bell says. If I could bring her back, I'd lasso the moon. Most states have focused their fixes on giving teens more driving experience before granting them unrestricted licenses. But the new brain research suggests that a separate factor is just as crucial: maturity. A new 17 or 18-year-old driver is considered safer than a new 16-year-old driver. Even some teens are acknowledging that 16-year-olds are generally not ready to face the life-threatening risks that drivers can encounter behind the wheel. Raising the driving age from 16 to 17 would benefit society as a whole, says Lisa Darwin, 17, of Nashville. Though many parents would be inconvenienced and teens would be frustrated, she says it makes sense to raise the driving age to save more lives. Lots of statistics in that, right? So there's evidence in there. Numbers are good evidence. How can we use that number? Since it's all those numbers, all that information, how can we use that evidence to help show that technology complicates the lives of teenagers or the actions of teenagers? Connie, you need to get off that game. How can we use that information to show that technology complicates the lives or actions of teenagers or adolescents? What do you got, Connie?
That 16-year-olds are more likely to crash than 18-year-olds.
Okay, but how does that apply to technology? Because let's be honest, Maverick, are you going to crash your...
They might be confused by all the controls of the car.
Okay, so maybe the technology in the car itself is confusing. Maverick, are you ever going to wreck that computer? No, like, are you going to drive it around and crash into a wall? Okay, so is there a life-threatening risk with Maverick being on that computer? So how do we take this information and apply it to technology? What do you got, Natalie? Okay. Good. Are teens impulsive in wanting to grab their cell phone with whatever they're doing? Right in the middle of a sentence, you'll stop talking to your friends and grab your phone, right? How can this be used to show that technology improves the actions of adolescents? What do you got, Alex? Okay. So you could use technology to make driving easier. What about the use of driving itself? What is it that this article is saying that teens need to be in order to use technology?
Careful.
They use a different word, but careful is not bad. Starts with an M. Mature. They're talking about maturity in this article, right? It's all about maturity within this article, correct?